As the community of Harrow grapples with the tragic loss of the Walsh family, parents are struggling with how to explain what happened to their children. On June 20th, Carly and her children, Madison and Hunter, were found dead in their Harrow home, all three shot and killed by the family's father, Stephen Walsh, in a murder-suicide. Tomorrow night, a Parenting Through Grief seminar is available at Harrow United Church. My next guest has already been fielding several questions as he helps the tight-knit community towards peace. Reverend Darrell Woods joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Amy.
How have these past few weeks been for you in Harrow?
Probably like no other time there. There isn't anywhere where you can go where there hasn't been a conversation. People trying to make sense of what's not possible to make sense of. People hurting. In a small community, everybody is within 1 or 2 degrees of knowing someone who was affected directly by the tragedy.
How would something like this compare to anything else you've experienced?
I've been in ministry for 35 years and worked with families who were grieving for all of that. But to watch a whole town grieving, and actually anywhere I go in the county, there are people who have a felt connection or a real connection to the family. This is in some ways the biggest grief event I've ever been involved with.
And you've provided pastoral support to police officers who attended that call. Please don't break any confidentiality. But what kind of supports have you been able to provide the OPP?
Well, I am a volunteer chaplain with the OPP, and chaplains are part of what they call the Healthy Workplace team. So we have mental health clinicians, we have social workers, we have psychologists that are in place to support the members. I'm actually very happy and proud to say that in this situation, members have also been doing a very good job of supporting each other. These are women and men who have spouses, who have children, who have nieces and nephews. So they're people first, and the care I've seen them giving each other has been remarkable.
Yeah, sometimes I think we overlook the fact that these officers work where they live. So this is part of their community as well.
Absolutely.
Some say this is a family tragedy. Why is it important to provide counseling to the community?
I would say that something like this can happen in our town, in our neighborhood, hits us in a different way. We hear about acts of violence in other places, but when it's literally at home, finding ways to speak to your kids, to speak to your family members about a terrible thing that shouldn't have happened, that's an unavoidable conversation.
You're inviting people to Harrow United Church on Friday, tomorrow. How will the community gathering on grief help people bring themselves to healing?
Well, I think that healing is a long process. One of the things that I think is important as a parent is to feel like you have good information to offer your kids, and you have a way of being with kids when they're facing grief, possibly for the first time. We can signal to our kids by our own response, our own willingness to talk about hard things, that even though hard things happen in the world, there's still good in the world.
As a parent, what's your advice for parents to process this with kids? How do you explain what they're hearing?
I'm looking forward to hearing what the experts from CMHA have to say about that. I think the fact that this was a tragedy involving violence brings a whole new dimension to it that is outside of my realm. When I worked with my own kids and worked with people in ministry who have faced sudden death or surprising death, the best advice I can offer is to work with kids at the level that they're at. Keep concepts simple. Avoid euphemisms. Like if you were to say somebody has gone away, to a child's mind, that's, well, maybe they're coming back. So we have to be as clear as we can. But I think the biggest thing for parents is to not claim to have answers that you don't have. And it's okay to say, I don't know why this has happened. But we'll be together, we'll look out for each other, and we'll do the best we can in a hard situation. I also think that kids are able to accept information at the level that they're at developmentally. So parents, I think, can trust that the conversation they have right now with their children about this particular tragedy will not be the only conversation they have, and that kids will take it in probably at a deeper or a wider level as they grow into it.
And keep circling back as they get more information.
Absolutely.
Always keeping that door open, I find, is super important, and always being open to reprocessing and processing. I notice with my son's very young, but you tell him something and he'll okay and he'll walk away, and then a day or two later come back and ask another question about it.
Yep.
And process it and go back. How important is it to stay on their pace of things?
Well, when we try to give the kids more than they're ready for, I think it's often an expression of our own anxiety. We're trying to get it right. We're trying to push the hard thing away with our little tricks of words. And kids, what they need from us is to be real, to be honest, to be sincere. And if we're trying too hard, they see that. So yeah, absolutely. Answer the question that's asked in the moment and give them space, because they need to process, and they process differently than we do.
What about the school of thought that people say this is an adult thing, kids need to be protected, we shouldn't be talking to them about it? What's your advice to that?
If we lived in a world where we could protect our kids from all the bad things, that might be useful advice. But we also have to prepare our kids to live in a world where hard things happen, where people die. And there's really no getting around that. I'm a big believer in being as transparent as possible, being as real as possible. I don't think there's anything to be gained by getting into graphic details of what actually happens. That's sharing trauma that our kids don't need. But the basic fact that people we knew, people we cared about, kids that these kids went to school with have died. There's no way of getting around that. And that's not an adult issue. That's a human issue.
And you're not the only person who's going to be on hand at this event on Friday. What other supports are going to be there for families?
Well, I would like to say, first of all, that this effort that we're hosting on Friday evening, a lot of the groundwork for that was done by the Harrow Family Health Team, who were already having a conversation with CMHA about an event in response to this. The Harrow Family Health Team has been great right from the beginning. They've made walk-in sessions available for people who are struggling. The CMHA, they're with us too. They're right in there. The costs related to this event are being underwritten by the Harrow Chamber of Commerce, who are on top of this. They want to see things get better for the community. And the supports that have been coming out have been incredible. One I wanted to tell you about is Dr. Chris Carrera, who is a psychotherapist, psychologist who lives in Harrow, but has a practice here in Windsor, has made an incredible offer, which we're going to be publicizing, of 10 free psychotherapy sessions for close family and friends of the Walsh family. Those are all signs of the way leaders and caregivers in the community are coming together to help people at a hard time.
It feels incredible to know that something like this happens and we break down those walls and have these conversations. I'm thinking in your many years being in pastoral leadership, if you could even have seen this happening maybe even 10 years ago.
It's an odd thing to talk about there being progress about, but people are, I think, getting better about talking about tragedy, talking about death, talking about violence that happens within homes. I wish we didn't have to talk so much about those things, but we can only help each other by doing so.
Darrow, thank you so much for coming in this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Amy.